Why was it formed?
I think that the JDL was formed because of the need to tell Jews who they are. The great tragedy is that most Jews don't know who they are, what they are. They don't know from where they came, and they, of course, don't know where they're going. Because of the kind of Jewish leadership that we have, the kind of Jewish identity which is so desperately needed among our youth to answer that burning question, why should I be Jewish, is simply lacking. It was formed as a counter to those people whose great dream is melt, amalgamate, fight for everybody else's battles except the Jewish battles. That's really why it came into being. From that concept that there is something very vital and important and exclusive in being Jewish come necessary points such as the love of a Jew for a second Jew and the need for every Jew to feel the pain of a second Jew. And that, of course, is something which most Jews don't feel. The great tragedy is that someone who has no problems doesn't feel the pain of other people. The most terrible of all examples of that is what happened during the 1940s, when 6 million Jews died, and 5 million other Jews in America knew that they were dying, and they simply didn't do what had to be done. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't feel for those Jews. They did feel for those Jews. It didn't mean that they didn't want to do something. They did want to do something. But they didn't want to do that thing which might have jeopardized their own future. And so they didn't. And 6 million Jews died. The Soviet Jewish problem was a clear case. A much more recent problem. For years and years and years and years, there was a Soviet Jewish issue. For years and years and years and years, Jews did nothing. And that includes the government of Israel, which for its own interest tried to stifle the dissenting Jews within the USSR during the early 1960s. And that is an untold story also, which has to be told. We came and we said, if there is a mitzvah in the Torah that says, thou shalt not stand idly by thy brother's blood, and that is as important as putting on tefillin or observing the Sabbath. And you got to do both. And a Jew that doesn't observe the commandment of doing something for his brother is as irreligious a Jew as the one that doesn't observe the Sabbath. So that concept of loving one's fellow Jew and understanding that there's one Jewish people, it's an indivisible people. You don't divide Jews into Soviet Jews or Syrian Jews or Brooklyn Jews. There are only Jews. That is a necessary thing. The concept of Jewish pride. Most Jewish youngsters have no idea that there's a tremendous Jewish pride to escape from their past. And what a glorious past it is. What a tremendous heritage it is. And we have youngsters who have been corrupted by their parents, corrupted by their temples, corrupted by Jewish leadership, whose Jewish education and background is symbolized by that horrible, horrible custom, bar mitzvah. And if I had it in my power to take and trample upon it and destroy it, I would do it. The youngster hates his Judaism, and with good reason, because the only Judaism that he knows is that hypocrisy which has been given him by his parents and by his temple and by that thing that passes for his rabbi. Pride means sitting down and opening up a Jewish book and knowing who you are and why your grandparents decided not to become Christian when it was so easy, but rather to die for being a Jew. And the other principle is, of course, the principle of a Jewish fist, a Jewish steel, a Jewish iron. One of the great Christian concepts which we Jews have gladly seized is that of turning the other cheek. We do that because we're afraid of what the Christian will say. We live and we die by this terrible fear. What will the non-Jew think? What will he say? From the days of Moses through to Joshua and David and the Maccabees and Bar Kokhba and the Israeli Defense Forces, a Jewish fist has been a very Jewish thing. And the tragedy is that we have so many so-called Jewish spiritual leaders who don't know what Judaism is. Their great mazal is that their countenance know a bit less than they do. So when they prattle about, not by might, but by my spirit, well, certainly we believe in a Jewish spirit, but there can be no Jewish spirit without a Jewish body. You won't have a Jewish body until you raise a fist and tell that non-Jew, listen, mister, I don't ask you to love me. I couldn't care less, but you're going to respect me. And if it takes a fist, then that's what it has to be. Jewish youth should learn how to fight. And Jewish youth should learn that they fight because they have to fight. And they should learn how to shoot weapons. Everybody else can. We have to be more Catholic than every single pope that ever lived. I think these are the basic principles of JDL and why it came into being. Not to create a new Jew, but to recreate that old Jew that we've forgotten because of having spent 2,000 years in the exile.
Now, tell me, what are the major objectives of JDL here in Israel and in the United States and elsewhere?
So here in Israel, it's to take a state of Jews and turn it into a Jewish state. One of the unknown things in this country is the total problem of a lack of Jewish identity in Israel. Now, people may say, "Oh, that's impossible." That's not true. There is an Israeli identity, but not a Jewish one. And thousands of youngsters here couldn't care less about being Jewish. They are Israelis. And they feel an identity more Arab Israeli. Only Jew here, and tell him exactly who he is, as there is back in America. He sees very, very little wrong with marrying an Arab, just as his counterpart sees very, very little wrong with marrying some local wasp. There's a great need to make a Jewish state here. Secondly, our second major goal is to make sure that Jews realize that you don't give back parts of the land of Israel. Never in the history of the world have we heard of a people giving back its own land, trying to buy peace with it. You don't buy peace with that. The land of Israel is ours. All of it is ours. If you give back part of it, you won't buy peace. It's absurd to think that Arabs are speaking of the 67 lines or the 57 lines or the 07 lines. They're speaking of the problem of the liquidation of the state of Israel. And that is what we are trying to get across to a people here that's very, very tired. They're tired of wars. And so when a person is tired, he starts to believe things that he would otherwise never believe. He thinks that maybe there's a chance for peace if we're flexible. My God, we've been flexible for so many, many years. It takes two to be flexible, and they're not. Those, I think, are the major things. Now, back in America, of course, the biggest problem, as I mentioned, was Jewish identity among youth. We've got to make the young Jew proud of being Jewish, and we've got to make the young Jew feel that he's part of a Jewish people, and that's the most important thing in the whole world to him. Secondly, we want to press for Aliyah to Israel. The Jew can never live for any permanent time in the exile. And America is not home. It is the exile. It is the exile. It may be a golden exile now. Every so often there are rumblings, and we feel what's right below that surface. We want Aliyah. We want Jews to come here and live here and make this a Jewish state. And by the way, the American Jew is, in my opinion, the best Jew in the world, can come here and give this country, one, Zionism, which it's lost. Two, a sense of fair play, which I don't know if it ever had. Three, the kind of a feeling that all Jews are brothers. And believe me, the tragedy is that that's not felt so in this country. Finally, for those Jews that don't go to Israel, there has to be a group that fights for Jewish rights. A Jew has to fight for Jewish rights first. For him, Jewish is beautiful, and Jewish rights come first. And when in America they face the problem of a quota system, and in America when they face the problem of neighborhoods where there's crime, which is rampant. I mean, all of these problems are facing Jews. There has to be a Jewish group that says, by God, Jewish money was given us to fight for Jewish rights. Somebody will always be ready to fight for that Congolese, I'm quite sure. But nobody is going to be ready to fight for Jews except Jews.